Well, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt made pretty big news at her briefing on Tuesday afternoon. She made a major announcement. Let's take a look at the clip.
As you all know, for decades, a group of DC-based journalists, the White House Correspondents Association, has long dictated which journalists get to ask questions of the President of the United States in these most intimate spaces. Not anymore. I am proud to announce that we are going to give the power back to the people who read your papers, who watch your television shows, and who listen to your radio stations. Moving forward, the White House press pool will be determined by the White House press team. Legacy outlets who have participated in the press pool for decades will still be allowed to join, fear not, but we will also be offering the privilege to well-deserving outlets who have never been allowed to share in this awesome responsibility.
Okay, so again, just to zero in on some of the language there, Leavitt said, quote, "I was proud to announce that we're giving the power back to the people." This is interesting from a DC perspective, but it will have ripple effects out on the media as a whole, because the White House press pool is very clubby. Everybody knows about the White House Correspondents Association through the annual White House Correspondents' Dinner, where there's a comedian who hosts this very lavish dinner that's supposed to be a fundraiser every spring, but really, let me tell you, is a lot more than a fundraiser. It is like an orgy of elitism, essentially. I've written that before, so that's my position on the White House Correspondents' Dinner is pretty clear, but the White House Correspondents Association, which is what Karoline Leavitt has just stripped of power here by saying, quote, "Legacy outlets who have participated in the press pool for decades will still be allowed to join, but we will also be offering the privilege to well-deserving outlets who have never been allowed to share in this awesome responsibility." What that means is the WHCA, the White House Correspondents Association, is no longer going to control the team of reporters that travels with the president everywhere he goes every single day. So the pool moves as the president moves. This also is with the vice president, and there are various other pools in journalism, but the presidential one is really the most important because you're monitoring the president's movements, and it's down to like the minute. You know, the reporter who's on print pool, there's also a reporter who's on like radio TV pool every day. They're sending reports out sporadically as the president moves or as schedule changes happen that keep the media generally informed. Obviously, this is something that goes back way before Twitter, X, social media existed, keeps the public abreast of what's happening with the president. That way, you know, if it's not telegraphed or if the pool doesn't have access, it's just a lot easier, A, to miss potential security concerns or to miss, for example, the Biden family. We know because a pool reporter was like, oh, Hunter Biden was traveling in this movement because you had a pool reporter there. So it sounds like sort of a silly, like inside DC thing, but the pool is actually a pretty important tradition because we pick up on a lot of different things because of the pool. A lot of times the White House will do what's called pool sprays. So that means as the president's moving or the press secretary is moving or officials are moving, they'll stop and take questions from these reporters. So allowing the White House to control this is a really interesting move because it means surely they're going to add some of these influencers they've been giving more access to the briefing, and serious conservative journalists, by the way. They'll have more access to the pool spray. They'll have more of an influence over what gets sent in pool reports if they're on, quote, pool duty. So that means they're the eyes and ears of the press. And, you know, in a way, I know a lot of people who are from some conservative outlets are really excited about this. A lot of people in the White House Correspondents Association, I just think honestly have good reason to be concerned about this. And that sounds silly from my perspective. But there are some influencers. This is like journalist gatekeeping. Like, as bad as the media is, doing pool is kind of hard. You have to have like the time down right. You have to know who to look for and all of that. So I think there's a glass half full take where it's like, actually, this is going to not force, but it's going to sort of be the rising tide that lifts all boats. Like you're asking great things of some of these new media outlets, and they'll have to respond by becoming more and more professional and bigger, able to sort of handle. It's different, right, than just spouting off hot takes on Twitter. As somebody who spouts out hot takes on Twitter, I obviously mean that with no offense, but like it's actually a very demanding thing. I would never want to ever have to do it because of the level of pressure. People I know who do it, they're like, oh, it's easy, don't worry about it. But you really have to be eagle-eyed, you really have to pay attention, and sometimes you are the eyes and ears of the public and of the press for hugely consequential, important events. The travel pool, when the president's overseas at big, big historical moments, the pool is there to provide historical background on the record about when the president moved. You can see, especially like post-Butler, why this stuff is super consequential. So the glass half full is that it demands a lot of outlets who could benefit from now being asked to step up to the plate. And I think that's great. Jackie Heinrich of Fox News posted in response, "This move does not give power back to the people. It gives power to the White House. The WHCA is democratically elected by the full-time White House press corps." That's hilarious, by the way. It's just democratically elected by the full-time White House press corps. Basically, that's just saying that they should be able to police themselves, which they've done very poorly for years. So I'll get back to that in a moment, because Heinrich continued to say, WHCA has determined pools for decades because only representatives from our outlets can determine resources all those outlets have, such as staffing, in order to get the president's message out to the largest possible audience, no matter the day or hour. So I think that second part is a much more reasonable critique of this, and it's probably one that the White House can work with outlets like Fox News on. Like, just practically, they have the whole system. Like, they put the pool schedule out every month, and they have a whole system of determining who's on the rotation when. It's all very complicated. But all that is to say, I think these practical concerns are totally legitimate. Concerns about, like, a bunch of unprofessional losers, mouth-breathing, influencing losers are overblown by legacy media, who has basically stooped to behaving like mouth-breathing, influencing losers for a decade now. At the same time, there's some skill involved in pool. So I'll choose on this case to be a glass half full person, which is rare for me. And I could see this being really good for conservative outlets that do real journalism. Think of a place like the Daily Wire and have White House correspondents and are now going to have more access probably to this. On the other hand, it does give more power to the White House, which can wield it in ways, obviously, because it's the White House, ways that are maybe to partisan ends that are not always in line with the public interest. But if I'm being asked to choose between the WHCA and the White House, who I should place my trust in, I would say, contra Jackie Heinrich, who said the WHCA is, quote, democratically elected. Well, the president of the United States is much more democratically elected. So I don't know that it's necessarily a point in the favor of the WHCA that the full-time White House press corps democratically elects it in this context. It is for the practical reasons, like that you sort of know your own needs if you're in that. But the power resting with the WHCA or the White House, to me, is just like a horse apiece, because the WHCA has disgraced itself, sadly, over the course of the last decade. So another blow to legacy media, but it's one that, it's a shakeup. It's one that does create incentives for legacy media to be better. They don't have to be lap dogs like they were to some extent with Joe Biden and have been, but nobody would want that. But they can be better. And conservative media who wants to start really competing with legacy media can be better too. And hopefully this makes everyone better. It may or may not. But I think the freak out that we're seeing from legacy media is wrong for a couple of reasons that we just went through. So thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube, wherever you download your podcasts. And you can go to undercurrents.tv, join the community, just $1 for your first month. We'll see you back here with more Undercurrents soon.